one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. I thought it was my turn tonight.
I think you're
Just keeping,
You did well.
Just keeping track.
Oops, I'm sorry, I really broke the ball there.
Are you all set with online?
Well,
We'll be in a moment.
yep.
We'll hold for just a moment for any online participants. Anybody out there?
I think it's, yeah, there's no one yet.
Where's Brandon?
Oh,
His office. It's upstairs. It was.
Is he coming down? Agenda review. Mr. Fuller had called Brandon and myself to discuss an item that was on the agenda because he's not going to be able to make it tonight. This was the naming of the waterways issue that we're going to be talking about at some point. And I didn't feel that it was appropriate for me unilaterally to remove something from the agenda once it's been published. So I bringing it to you now. Brandon was going to recommend that we wait because Dave is very concerned about this issue and there were some things that he wanted to talk about within that. And it would certainly lead to duplicate, and that's what Dave was saying. It would lead us to duplication in the discussion if we go into it tonight and then have to do it all over again. How's the board feel about that? So everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Nate, you're okay? Yeah. All right, so when we get to that part of the discussion, we will hold off on that. Anything else with the agenda that anybody wants to reorganize? Where did you end up, John? Legislative update. The audit presentation and the transfer station analysis. Those are discussions that might take a little bit longer. John, would you prefer to go ahead of those, maybe?
Not really.
No? Seriously? Oh, okay.
I'm easy.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. I have no problem. Anything else? Anybody? Do I hear a motion to continue the naming of the water? I'm sorry? Somebody's microphone's on. Check. Okay. Do I hear a motion to continue the naming of the waterways discussion to the next meeting? Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries, it's unanimous. That'll be on the next agenda. Comments from the Select Board, Town Manager, and citizens, topics not on the agenda. Select Board, any comments from anybody? Rika, are you digging for
I think I had any. Let me just, I wrote something down. But I think it was relevant to detail. No, okay, I'm cool.
You're okay?
Yep.
Town Manager, did we wake you up?
No, I was up there finishing something up.
Okay, sorry.
Wait until my town manager update.
Okay. Citizens' topics not on the agenda. I see VL Coffin is here tonight and would like to have a moment to introduce himself. He is running for a House seat in the state of Vermont. Mr. VL Coffin.
Yes, I just want to thank you for letting me come in tonight and introduce myself. My name is VL Coffin. I live in Cavendish. As Mike said, I'm running for the House seat here for this district. I'm retired from the Vermont Guard back in 2017. And I can't see the way this is going. And I wanted to come to your town meeting, to the select board meeting, and hopefully get to attend some more of them so I can hear the concerns from people. I'd give my card to anyone that wants it after the meeting, and I'm free to talk if you have any questions. I didn't want to take a lot of your time because I know you have a full agenda.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Any questions for Mr. Coffin?
Not right
Not right off.
All right, if anyone does, I'm always available.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from citizens, topics not on the agenda? Hearing none. Review minutes of the previous meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of 5/28/24?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes?
Is there, I'm, with things like typos and things, is that worth bringing up or not? I mean, I'll give you the example and you can say. On the item 13 about Meadow Lane, at one point in the first paragraph, it's referred to as Meadow Land as opposed to Meadow Lane. I don't know that, I mean, I would consider that a typo. I don't know whether that might have any bearing in the future.
Yeah, that's gonna be fixed.
And then under 14C, it refers to the town treasurer rather than the town treasurer.
Little things.
So, I mean, picky, but
It looks better if they're corrected.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think those were the major things.
Kelly, anything from you?
No?
Nate? Okay. There's a motion to approve the minutes, 5/28/24. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries, it's unanimous. Fiscal year 23 audit presentation. Brandon, are you doing that, or you're, okay, Steve's taking that? Steve Heyer, the town treasurer.
Thank you. This is, feel really officious. I feel like maybe it's part of the presidential debate or something. I don't know, but hopefully you either brought your physical copy or maybe you can look on the electronic copy. I have one extra copy with me if anybody in the audience here is interested in trying to follow along. I don't want to embarrass you or force it upon you, but if anybody wants it to look along, you're welcome to it. So I'll just put it right here, and if you want to grab it, that's okay. I know this is a riveting subject for everybody, so. All right, I'm going to try to, I'm not going to speed through this on the interstate, but I'm going to try to keep us through on the main road, and we'll only go down for a side trip if you folks have questions or particularly want to go that way. So audit, we have an audit every year, and I think what we just want to do is point out a few things that I think are of importance and are meaningful to you as select board members, because this is really the audit for you and for the citizens to show independently what the books look like for the town. So we're going to start with page 1, which might make some sense. And pages 1 through 4 are a letter to you from the audits, the independent auditor's report. I think the most important thing in this particular letter is the beginning of the second paragraph, where it starts off with, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements referred to above present fairly and in all material respects the respective financial position of the government activities, blah, blah, blah. That's what you really want them to say to you when they audit your books. That they fairly represent in all material aspects our status at the end of FY23. So we passed the audit. And there are other things they could say. They could give you adverse opinions and find us deficient, but they didn't. So we passed the audit, which is a good thing. And the rest of that letter is filled with sort of an explanation as to what they did, and a little bit of sort of weasel language that says, well, if we didn't find something, it's not really our fault. We tried, but we're not necessarily going to find everything, and if it escaped us, too bad. So then pages 5 through 12 might be something you may want to read. About 20 years ago, it was decided that audits are really too confusing for the average person, and wouldn't it be great if we had management write a summary of the audit that kind of presented it in layman's terms to the public. So these pages are something that we're required to write as an interpretation or a highlight of the fine points of the audit. So it's not supposed to be audited. I mean, over the years, some auditors have decided to audit this, and it sort of developed its own expectations in terms of what the format is. But this essentially is our opportunity to explain to people what the audit says. So you may want to look through this at some point, and in theory anyway, it's supposed to give you the high points of the audit in somewhat understandable terms. Well, pages 13 through 16 are something that was required a number of years ago as well, because we're a nonprofit, so we run under what's called fund accounting, which is different from business accounting, from for-profit accounting, because we're not as concerned about we're not really concerned about making a profit. We're concerned more about stewardship of resources. How can we best preserve and carefully carefully be stewards of public money? So we run by fund accounting, which in its simplest sort of term takes me back to when I was a kid, and my father would bring home his paycheck in cash, and my mother had a series of envelopes where she'd put the part that had to go to the rent in one envelope, and the grocery money in another envelope, and the electric bill in another envelope. Well, we kind of operate on a more complicated, sophisticated aspect of that. We keep things in funds based on the purpose for which they exist. So we have a general fund, we have a highway fund, we have a solid waste fund, we have a grant fund, we have a whole bunch of different pockets, and we treat each one of those pockets separately within the whole town operations. So we have separate operations in different funds. And that can be confusing if you're trying to look at the whole thing together. So they decided that they would add to the audit 3 or 4 pages that kind of tried to present us as a business operation. I'm not sure that that maybe accomplished what they wanted to, but those 4 pages try to show us as if we were a business operation. But I think the core starts on page 17. If you could look at page 17, because that presents a balance sheet by fund as of the end of June 2023. So you can see across the page are divided up into various different funds, and it lists our assets, what we own, our liabilities, what we owe, and then our fund balance, which is what we have left over. And it's divided by the funds. You see there's general fund, highway fund, capital reserve fund, moving across the page. And what's important to note, I think, is the grouping of accounts towards the bottom. It says fund balances or deficits. And that lists our fund balance, what's left over, what's the difference between what we own and what we owe is what our fund balance is. And that will list all of those fund balances across the page for each particular fund. But it's not quite that easy because there are different types of fund balances, okay? There are 5, you can see on that page, there are 5 different types of fund balances. So if you briefly go to page 35, you can keep up with me here. There's a bit of an explanation as to what those different types of fund balances are. So we have non-spendable fund balance, which means exactly what it says. It's a fund balance you can't spend, which seems on the surface to be maybe kind of weird. But we have, the biggest example of that are prepaid expenses. Sometimes we have a bill for expenses in the new fiscal year that has to be paid before that year begins. So that's something called a prepaid expense. As of June 30th, it's still an asset to us, and it's still part of our fund balance. But come July 1st, it's an expense and the money is gone. It's like you stop at the bank on your way to the grocery store, take out some money to pay for your groceries, but on the way you go to Walmart and buy some clothes, then you get to the grocery store, you don't have anything left to spend. It's an asset for us temporarily that's not, you can't spend it because it's already going to be spent for something else. And then there are other various, there's restricted fund balance, which means that state law or a grant restricts your use of that money to a very specific purpose. And so a lot of our grants, if we have money left from the grant, that's restricted fund balance. Highway is a restricted fund balance because you can only use a highway fund balance for highway purposes. Then there's a committed fund balance, which for us essentially means that, or the most common reason we have that, is that you, the select board, have already committed that money to a future budget. Because when we built the FY24 and the FY25 budgets, we committed part of our surpluses to fund that budget. So that money we can't spend for any other purpose because it's committed to be spent to support a future budget. And then the assigned fund balance is, for most part, is that rainy day fund that was established a few years ago. That money has been set aside and assigned for a specific purpose, but you as the select board could decide when and where and how to spend that money. And finally, there's the money that doesn't have any restrictions to it, the unassigned fund balance. And that's, wrong use of the term, but that's the money you can play with. That's the money that's available for pretty much whatever you as the select board decide it needs to be used for. Most commonly, it's used to lower taxes in future years. So there's five different categories, and so the most flexible and perhaps the most meaningful fund balance item to you folks is the unassigned fund balance in the general fund, which means that at June 30th, 2023, there was $86,762 as an unassigned general fund balance. So that money is available to be used. As I said, generally it's returned as taxes, a reduction, but. And you move on 2 more pages to page 19. And what you have here is a very similar format to the page we just talked about, except this looks at revenue and expenses. How did we do within fiscal year 23? How much money did each fund bring in? How much money did each fund spend? Did we have a profit or surplus, or did we have a deficit? And the two I think we want to look at in particular are the general fund and the highway fund. So you can see at the end of the first series of numbers, the revenue for those funds, then the expenditures, and net those out to come to a surplus or a deficit. So the general fund lost $37,839. And the highway fund lost $23,894. Which doesn't sound great, right? We lost money in both funds. You got to love accounting. Because you, or your predecessors in some cases, decided that we had money left over from prior years that we were going to use to help offset the expenses in 2023. Some of that unassigned fund balance they had put towards those 2 budget years. And since you can't record revenue twice, what actually happens when you use a fund balance is you run a deficit that reduces your fund balance. So when we built, the select board at the time built the 2023 budget, they built it to lose $45,418 because they had money on hand that was going to cover that. So the budget was built to use $45,000 of fund balance, and it only used $37,000 of fund balance. So even though we lost money, we did better than what we had planned on. Does that make any sense
As long
whatsoever?
as we don't have to repeat and explain it.
Right, right. And the same thing happened with the highway. We planned on running a $76,000 deficit because we're going to use all that fund balance money that we already had in our pockets, but we only lost $24,000. So we did much better than what we had anticipated. So in a very strange way, the deficits were actually better than what we had planned on. So we'll go to page 21 next, because the one fund that we have that is supposed to be run like a business is the solid waste fund. Because technically, the solid waste fund, the fees that we charge are supposed to cover the expenses. So that's what's called an enterprise or a proprietary fund. And it operates like a business. So here we can see the same thing, assets, liabilities, and the net position at the end of the year for the solid waste fund. And then a couple of pages beyond that, they'll show the revenue and the expense for the year. And I'm just going to mention briefly, because it dovetails with our next discussion. All the money in the solid waste fund is reserved money, because it can only be used for solid waste. So in the audit, what you see is the solid waste fund has a reserved fund balance of a minus $4,097. So the fund balance is not a positive, it's a negative, so it's in deficit, $4,097. But that doesn't really tell the full story. And if you look toward the bottom of page 21, you'll see a category that shows net position, and it lists 3 items that total to a negative $4,097. We have a little over $80,000 invested in the capital assets at the transfer station. We have $73,000, almost $74,000 in a reserve fund. And that reserve fund is there to buy or replace the capital assets when need be. And it also has an amount of money that's required by the state for us to have for when the transfer station, if and when the transfer station closes down, we have to have enough money on hand to cover the cost to close that. So we have money that represents the value of the equipment we have. We have money to help replace equipment and close the place down when that has to happen. And then we have our unrestricted balance, which comes from the operation of the fund itself, which in theory, since charges and expense should cover the charges, our operational balance in theory should be zero. It's a negative $158,000. So this will be covered more in the next discussion, but we have run a cumulative deficit of almost $160,000 since the transfer station began. And arguably, we should think about doing something about that. But that's a bit of a digression. So anyway, to move us along a little bit, the biggest section of this, starting on page 26 and going through page 56, are notes to the financial statement. There's a lot of detail about a lot of different things that you can certainly look at your leisure. A few things in here that might have meaning to you that I'll mention today would be page 37. Because we have about $2 million. The bottom of page 37 talks about deposits. We have about $2 million in the bank. And one of the key issues is, to what extent is that money secured? I mean, there are certain insurance that is available, or exists to cover deposits in case of bank failure. So how much of our $2 million is actually insured so that it's rock solid that we're going to have the $2 million? And what this explains to you is essentially that all of it is in one way or another. Some of it is covered by the federal deposit insurance, some of it is covered by securities investor protection, and some of it is required by what's called a collateralization agreement with the bank. So that all of the funds we have in the bank are insured.
Is there a cutoff amount for that?
Yes, there are for different things,
Yeah.
yes, like FDIC covers $250,000. That's why we have a collateralization agreement with the bank. So the bank holds other securities that ensure the fact that whatever we have in the bank over $250,000 will still be available to us if something should happen to that bank. And after that, there's some pages in the end, starting on page 60, that break down some of our funds, because there's a category in the earlier pages that lumps together a few of the smaller funds. And I don't think I really will take any time at the moment to go through that, unless you had questions as you moved through this yourselves. But we'll go to, essentially to the end, page 76 and 77. Another thing the auditors do is they look into our internal controls. Because in accounting, nobody should have control of a transaction from the beginning to the end. Nobody should collect the cash, record the cash, count the cash, take the cash to the bank, write the checks, reconcile the bank statement, because no matter what happens, everything is going to be perfect, right? And there are all kinds of stories about towns that have gotten into issues with that happening. So they look to make sure that there are checks and balances that will hopefully at least make it more difficult for that kind of thing to happen, if not prevent it. And then on page 77, they state in the third paragraph that the tests they ran disclosed no instances of non-compliance. Talk about great double negatives, so that's a good thing. No instances of non-compliance. And finally, there are three levels of issues that an auditor can really find. There are material weaknesses, deficiencies, and other matters. And you really don't want the auditors to find material weaknesses, which means something major is wrong with your system, or deficiencies, which is still something fairly major. But there's always room for improvement, and auditors always like to find something wrong that helps to justify the fact that they did what they're supposed to do when they do the audit. So the management letter, which I think we included as just a separate one-page item, I think that was there electronically as well. They found 3 items that were listed in that other category. And briefly, those 3 items were, one was around bank reconciliations, that we've been through 5 accountants in the last 4 years, and at one point we were a couple of years behind in our bank reconciliations. And at the time they did the audit, we weren't that far behind, but we were still having significant issues. So in December, I took over doing the bank reconciliations, and since then, they've been done on a monthly basis, within the first couple of weeks at the end of the previous month, and they've all balanced out to exactly the same variance as we had at the end of November. So I think we finally managed to get a handle on this particular issue. So bank statements are being reconciled on a regular and recurring and timely basis. The other 2 items we're still working on. One is general ledger reconciliations. There are a lot of accounts that you should look at and reconcile every single month. And we don't do all of those yet. I do a significant number of them, but in currently in averaging 12 and a half hours a week. It's more than you can handle in that amount of time. So we do have accounts that are not being reconciled on a monthly basis. They hopefully get reconciled at the end of the year, but we still need to get better in that particular category. And the auditors, the other one is cash receipts. The auditors really want us to take cash to the bank on at least a weekly basis, and we don't reach that point. We do at tax time when there's perhaps a significant amount of cash, but beyond that, cash doesn't go to the bank as frequently as the auditors would like. So that probably isn't as brief as it should have been, but that's a walk through the audit. And if folks have questions, I'll be happy to try to address those.
I came up with one, Steve. Years ago, we had a different auditor. John, I think it was back when you were on the board. And I'll use the Martin Memorial Hall accounts because those made sense to me. We had two separate Martin Memorial Hall accounts, one for maintenance of the building and one for like upgrades to the building. So they were two separate things. And I think that a previous auditor wanted those things to be combined and not have all of those little accounts. You remember that? Did we ever go back to that? Did we, in other words, return back to having those separate accounts, or has it still been left the way it was from those previous auditors?
We had, Sullivan and Powers felt that we were, and this may be what you're talking about, felt that we were dealing with money that wasn't really town operations. Because we were holding on to some money. We were trying to be helpful to town organizations. We were holding on to some historical society money. We had some money, it was a resident, we were selling books for that particular resident about Weathersfield, and we had some money that, for that purpose. There were a variety of different things that we were holding on to money because we were trying to be, I think the point was, we were trying to be helpful for the flags, which was a sort of an independent operation at the beginning. And the auditor said, no, you can't do that. You can only have money and handle money that's involved with official town select board sanctioned activities. And so they made us stop doing a number of those things. The Martin Hall, I don't specifically recall Martin Hall being a part of that.
Oh, okay.
But we do have a reserve fund for Martin Hall repairs,
Right.
which was voted on by the voters and is still in existence. And the only other Martin Hall fund we have is just a department within the general fund budget.
Okay,
So I think the answer to your question is yes, we've taken care of that.
okay.
And I would concur, there were two accounts, there was no reason for them to be separate. And I think they were combined maybe 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't terribly long ago.
No.
I know there was one,
And
well,
they-
yeah.
And we needed the one that corresponded with the created reserve fund. So the language of the reserve fund was more clear.
We've had a couple of reserve funds for Martin Hall over the years, and we only have one at this point.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any questions for Steve from the board?
No, thank you, that was a,
And if you don't want your physical copy, you can either give it to me now or leave it with Brandon, and we will treasure it always. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from anybody for Steve while he's here? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the transfer station analysis. Now, Brandon, are you doing that one, or is Steve still doing that?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I think Olivia is just sharing it with everyone on SAPA and Zoom. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything all set?
Yep.
Okay. So we did a transfer station report or a transfer station study to show where we are and what a couple of options of what we can do to get to where we need to be. So for those of you that don't know, the transfer station is located at 5024 Vermont 106 in Perkinsville, Vermont. The purpose of the station is to temporarily hold municipal solid waste, construction and demolition. We shorten that to C&D, recyclables and glass. The transfer station is
Thank you,
open
Steve.
from,
relocating so I can
Oh, okay. I thought you were leaving. My apologies, Brandon.
that's okay. The transfer station's open Wednesdays from 12 to 5, Saturdays from 7 to 4, and Sundays from 12 to 4. Like Steve was saying, this is an enterprise fund. It does not operate from tax revenue, rather from the fees generated from permit stickers and punch tickets. Net revenue expense should be 0 at year end unless we budget for capital reserves. The transfer station currently serves the residents of Reading, Weathersfield, and West Windsor through a transfer station agreement. The agreement is in place so that 3 towns can share the station. Considering the size of each of the towns, it wouldn't make sense for each town to have a transfer station. So back in 2021, we signed the transfer station agreement. The transfer station agreement shares the fixed costs of the transfer station through an allocation formula. The allocation formula is built from, is based on number of households as determined by the Vermont Finance Agency. The fixed costs include transfer station, highway department labor, admin and finance, and all other operating and maintenance costs and debt repayment. For example, in FY24, we estimated that we'd have about $142,000 in fixed expenses. So we put that into the fixed allocation formula, and that's how we get each town's share. Weathersfield's was $78,000, Reading's was $22,000, and West Windsor's was $41,000. Once these allocations are paid, each town can distribute permit stickers to their residents. The permit sticker allows residents of all 3 towns to gain access to the transfer station. Fixed revenues nor fixed expenses are an issue. They don't generate significant deficits or surpluses. So why do we have financial issues at the transfer station? Variable revenues and expenses that's where our problem is. Variable revenues are generated through punch ticket sales. Each punch is currently $4.25. We sell 5 punch cards for $21.25 and 10 punch cards for $42.50. So when a permitted user enters the transfer station to dispose of C&D, MSW, or actually just C&D and MSW, the transfer station attendant reviews what they have, like a bag of trash, and they punch the corresponding number of punches that they think that trash should cost, based on doing it for a long time. Sometimes there could be some error with that because we don't have a scale. We do not charge for recyclables. So if a user has a permit sticker, they can go there and they can dispose of all the recyclables that they want. They just need a sticker. When the containers are full, our hauler, currently Alva Waste Services, drives a truck to the transfer station and then hauls everything out. MSW and C&D goes to Coventry or New York. Recycling goes to Alva's facility where it's sorted and distributed to various vendors, or thrown away if it's contaminated. We pay a hauling charge and a per ton rate for MSW, C&D, recycling, and glass. We also pay a rental fee for recycling and glass containers. So we actually rent the containers for recycling and gas. We did a study back then and we figured that it was around the same cost, plus we always have a new container. I think our old one was rusting out, wasn't it?
Yeah, when you buy them, they tend to rot and get banged up and disappear quicker than you do if you rent one. If you rent one, they just keep cycling in new containers. So the cost analysis proved that renting was the way to go over time.
So variable revenues are problematic, and we have been accumulating a deficit. Variable revenues were not as problematic prior to 2017 because we received money for our recyclables. China's national sword policy went into effect in 2018, and they stopped accepting our recycling. And then boom, we started paying, and we started paying a lot of money for it. So what this graph here shows is a 23-year history of the transfer station's net revenue expense. So you can see back in 2002, it ran an $82,000 deficit, 2003 a $34,000 deficit, 2005 $32,000, and so forth. It hit a surplus in 2012 and in 2018, and for the past couple of years, I mean, pretty much every year since 2019, we've been operating in a deficit, and that deficit has been accumulating. Since the transfer station opened, the cumulative deficit has grown, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So this chart here shows FY23 to FY25 recycling. It shows how many pulls we have, how much we pay for each pull, the total tons, the average rate per ton. The reason I say average rate is because we operate on a fiscal year, they operate on a calendar year. They increase their costs on a calendar year. So we pay two different prices, one price for 6 months, the other price for the other 6 months. We did pay some fuel surcharges in FY23. Those have gone away in December of FY24. In November of FY24, they went away. So in FY23, we paid $61,000 for recycling. FY24, $63,000. We're projected to spend $67,000 in FY25. Next slide. C&D, construction and demolition. We had 83 pulls, 339 tons, and we paid some fuel surcharges again with C&D until November of FY24. Total cost was $58,000 in FY23, $61,000 in FY24, projected to be $64,000 in FY25. Municipal solid waste, we had 60 pulls, 574 tons of trash were transferred out of our station. We paid $81,000 in FY23, $84,000 in FY24, $92,000 in FY25. And glass, we do have some good news. We are no longer paying for glass. The Solid Waste District Commission has decided to pay for the glass, so we just pay for a container rental. But prior to that, we transferred 62 tons of glass from the transfer station, and that costed us $3,300 each in FY23, $28.90 this year because we stopped paying for it this year, and then projected to be $924 next year. So I've listed a couple of facts here. So we charge more punches for users to dispose of MSW and C&D in an effort to offset what it costs us at the transfer station to haul our recycling from the transfer station to the recycling center. If we just base the cost of the punch on MSW and C&D, it would be $3.25, so it'd be about $1 cheaper. The cost would have been $3.30 this year in FY24, and would be $3.60 next year in FY25. So like Steve was saying, the transfer station had a cumulative deficit. Although the transfer station has a reserve account with $73,000 and assets valued at $80,000, our net position is negative $4,097 because we also have $93,000 in debt. So this needs to be addressed as soon as possible. I think when Steve and I were joking around, you know, if it was a business on its own, it would close soon. I'd like, do you have a question?
I do have a question. What is the $93,000 of debt?
So we financed, we borrowed from ourselves to purchase a new trash compactor and put in a concrete pad. That $93,000 is actually, it goes into our fixed allocation formula, and it's paid for by all 3 towns. So each town pays a portion based on their number of households. So to calculate the punch ticket costs for MSW and C&D, we take the total amount of variable revenue generated. For example, in FY24, we estimate that we will generate $187,000 in variable revenue from punch ticket sales. And then basically you take that and divide it by the cost per punch, and you come up with 44,158 punches. So then we take the total estimated cost of variable expenses for FY25, and then we divide it by the estimated number of punches. So we come up with $5.02 per punch to break even if we continue the way that we're going now. And that doesn't address the cumulative deficit. So this does include the cost of recycling and keeping everything status quo. The actual cost of MSW and C&D is estimated to be $157,000. So the punch would only need to be $3.56 or around $3.60 earlier in the study, if we charged according to what people were disposing of. So we don't know, or at least I don't know, how much we would need to charge for recycling if we decided to do that, because we don't know how many punches we would have. We know that the total cost or the projected cost would be $67,000, but we don't know how many punches we'd actually have. So if we charged per punch or developed a new punch card for it, we'd have to go through a year and keep track of those punches in order to have a number to divide it into. Next slide. Here are some options that we can choose from or think of other options. We could keep it status quo, continue offering recycling to users for free, and pay $67,000 to transfer the recycling from our station to the recycling center. This would mean we would have to increase the punch ticket to $5, which would be $25 for a 5-punch or $50 for a 10-punch card. To charge users more to dispose of MSW and C&D to offset our free recycling program. There are benefits to our free recycling program, but it's problematic financially. So as long as we can deal with that part of it, then we could continue with this option. Option 2 would be maintain the $4.25 per punch and charge for recycling. So the way that we would do that is we'd keep the punch ticket the same cost that it is now, and then we would punch a user's punch ticket when they disposed of recycling, consistent with how we would punch it for MSW and C&D. This could end up leading to a surplus or a deficit at year end, but it would give us the information we need to fix the problem in FY26. And then the next option is to charge each town for recycling through the fixed allocation formula. So we would basically take the $67,000, add it to our fixed costs, and it would be paid for through the permit sticker. We would just consider it fixed, and it may be a small, 5,000 under or 5,000 over, based on the amount of recycling that we get that year. But then we could transfer that balance to the next year. So what that would result in is Weathersfield would pay $37,000, Reading would pay almost $11,000, and West Windsor would pay almost $20,000. Option 4 is similar to what the town of Springfield does. So we would continue to offer our free recycling program, and then we would budget for a deficit in the general fund, and share the deficit with all 3 towns through our fixed allocation formula. So according to the graph at the top of page 2, our deficit was 40,000 last year and is estimated to be 20,000 this year. The reason the deficit's lower this year is because we increased the punch ticket last year by 75 cents, and that cut our deficit in half. So this pretty much does the same thing that option 3 does, but it just does it through the general fund, basically. The next thing we need to address is the cumulative deficit. So we have a cumulative deficit of $109,506. So it was $89,095 last year, and we'll add another $20,000 to it this year. And that's subtracting out the loan that we have. That's why it's not 158,000 plus a 20. Option 1 would be to bail the transfer station out by taking out a loan using ARPA funds or other funding mechanism if it is paired with an option that addresses future deficits. This will remove the cumulative deficit and give the transfer station an opportunity to start back at 0. Option 2 would be to bail the transfer station out according to option 1 and then develop a term and payment in our fixed allocation formula for all 3 towns. The problem with that is that the agreement's only been in effect since 2021. So I think we would consider looking at the past 3 years of deficits and potentially add those together and put that into our fixed costs. Because prior to that, we didn't have an agreement. Now, if we decided to do the entire cumulative deficit and put it into our fixed allocation formula per year for 7 years, Weathersfield would pay $85.87, West Windsor would pay $45.62, and Reading would pay $24.93. So overall, Weathersfield would pay $60,000 of the cumulative deficit, West Windsor would pay $36,000, and Reading would pay $17,000. So this does only include principal, so if the decision is to borrow from a bank, we would have to budget in the interest payments. And that's everything that I have. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
I went through the numbers in the charts on page 21 of the packet, 12 of the packet. Recycling is up 43 tons over the 3-year period. C&D is up 28 tons, and MSW is up 33 tons. So there's a 10-ton differential, and I know that that last year, fiscal year 25, is a projected number anyway.
Yes.
But with that projected number on MSW, your tonnage is up, from 33 to 50 in a projection. It went up 16 the year before. I suppose it's reasonable to think it's going up 20. I guess the question and point that I'm trying to make is, this is the 3rd time we've dealt with this in this way and looked at this. We've been, over the last 3 years. And we've always looked at it and said, we got to increase the punch ticket. Recycling is free. We increase the punch ticket and we're not gaining any ground. So that suggests to me that the recycling is growing because people know they can pay less. They can get more stuff in their bag and pay 1 punch and throw more in recycling for free. And the problem's perpetuating itself, and it's not working itself out this way. My personal opinion, it's time to start paying for recycling. We talked about this today, and I think one of the other points is that if quite frequently our recycling is getting contaminated, so when it gets to the final destination, it's ending up back in MSW anyway.
And that's what happened with China. We were sending all of our recycling to China, and it was contaminated, so they were just having to throw it away. Because people don't actually, well, not everyone, but, you know, you have a milk jug and you don't rinse it out, or put a food inside the recycling and it contaminates it, or oil. What have you seen?
Can I go over there?
Yes, please.
You're correct that we've tried fixing this 3 times, but we haven't fixed the whole problem. We've tried adjusting just to cover the loss on our variable expenses. We're talking about trying to fix everything. And the problem is, if you hit reset and you don't fix the root cause of the problem, it's just gonna happen again. The fact is, the state of Vermont is pushing to have less stuff go to a landfill. And the more you put into recycling bins, and the more they do, they get rid of compost, they've gotten rid of glass, they've gotten rid of cardboard, tin cans, and plastic. All that stuff used to go into the trash. Now the trash is coming in less. You know, we're not getting as many, so we have to charge more to cover what we have, but we're doing more in recycling, so those costs are getting higher. So it's just gonna chase itself. The other issue we have is, again, I know I've said this in the past, but we only have 2 people working at that facility. When it does get busy, people come in and they just start throwing stuff in, and Dave can't be right there watching that recycling bin. We've had people come in and throw complete cases of yogurt in there, and he comes back, he doesn't see it because other people throw cardboard on top of it, close the door, hit the button, and the whole thing's contaminated. So now it costs you the municipal solid waste rate, not recycling rate. They can't recycle it. We have a lot of people that there's people that take advantage of a system, and they know if it's really busy and slammed, they can sneak right by, zip right over, throw their stuff in the C&D, throw it wherever, and get out of there and not even pay a punch. We've had a lot of people report that, they see that. There's other people that like to try to talk the attendant down, and while he's dealing with that person, 3 other people are throwing the trash away, they're walking off, and he can't keep up. That's not, I'm just trying to defend them. They're doing the best they can up there, especially when it's busy. When it gets busy, that place is crazy. We could make a lot more money if we could recycle better, cleaner. The product would be better leaving the facility. They could start making money off it on that end, and that would reduce our cost. But they can't. They can't keep up when it is that busy. I don't know how else to fix it, other than maybe magically make a scale coming in and a scale going out, and you get a little sensor in your car and it automatically charges you on your account, and you're done. Other than that, I don't know.
How expensive is this scale?
They're extremely expensive, and you have to build shelter over them and keep the ice and the water and the trash out of them. You have to have 2, or if you use 1, then you have to weigh twice. You have to weigh coming in, weigh coming out. You have to worry about the funding. How do you convert the tons into the punches? Do they have to do the math? You can't take cash, you don't want cash there. That's one more thing they'd have to deal with.
Sure.
Lines?
Sure.
Correct. Where would you put it? You put it at the gate, you get 30 people now waiting outside on the main road.
Yeah.
Imagine if everything was moved to the gate.
Of course.
You know?
Of course.
It's something that you have to either do it right and completely, or get out of it.
Yep.
It's not something, because we're gonna keep going in a hole, and yes, it's wonderful, it's a great feeling to help people recycle, but you can only lose so much blood before you pass out. It's years of it happening, and it's not gonna get any better because the state, and I agree, recycling is good if it's done properly. We can't guarantee a clean product leaving there, so Elva comes, they take the container, they bring it to their shop, they dump it out, next thing you know, you got oil. Somebody threw trash in there, because, oh, nobody's looking, poof, it's gone. I'm defending Tyler and Dave to the end. It's horrible weekend hours, they don't get paid a lot, and they're doing the best they can at that facility. God bless them. But if we don't either give them more help or make it easier or make it better for them to do their job, that's gonna compound the problem.
Have you sat down with Brandon and talked about any possible ways to restructure the flow through the facility or anything like that?
We have, I've gone over it with the guys up there, there's really not a way to do it. The issue is you have 2 people doing the work of 4. And people are like, oh, they're sitting down or they're not doing this. When it's really hot, you have to be careful. You have to make sure they're sitting down, they're drinking their water, they're getting cooled off. And if it's busy, they're not doing that. I worry about them all the time. If somebody comes in with a TV and they throw it in the wrong pile, or they go over and they dump off a $35 refrigerator and he can't catch them because he's busy over there sorting the copper or putting light bulbs away, and then 3 people go up to the trash and they throw the trash away and Tyler's in taking care of light bulbs or a battery, because you can't leave a battery laying out, that you're losing revenue. It just happens. I'd like to say everybody's honest and everybody's great, but there's times where people, if they can get away with it, they're gonna get away with it. Or if they're not gonna chase the attendant down, well, it's only 2 punches. I'll throw it in here and I'll leave. It's not a great scenario, and I don't mean to be all gloom and doom. There's days where it's not busy, and it's fine to have 2 people. Dave at the bottom is taking care of the tires, making sure that they've been charged. He's making sure the C&D is going where the C&D is. The trick now is people drive up there, and instead of going to C&D, they say, oh, it's metal, and they're throwing stuff away that's plastic. They're throwing stuff away that's wood. It's not metal. So it's contaminating the metal pile. And we're paying, we're getting less revenue out of that because they're pulling out the crap. Dave can't go up and show them, okay, this goes here, this goes there, because now somebody's throwing yogurt in the recycling bin.
Right.
It's not helpful to not have enough help.
August?
Mr. Chairman, can I make a brief public comment?
No. Of course. I know August pretty well, so I can banter with him.
I'm a big fan of the transfer station. I'm a regular user. So having looked at this before and having been a customer, and having lived in many areas of the country when I was in the service, there's probably 3 brief things I would say. You need kind of a variable and a fixed solution. The $50 permit has not gone up. It's not caught up with the times. If it was increased to $10 alone, that would be another $16,500 annually. People understand that. People know that the costs go up. The other thing is, if you did 1 punch to use the recyclables, because that's exactly what happens. People sneak around. People throw stuff in there that shouldn't go in there. I've watched people throw returnable cans and bottles in there, whole things of them. So that leads into the third thing. But if you charge 1 punch, if you had 100 people a day pay for 1 punch, and they did that 3 times a week, that would be $66,600. That's exactly how much that would equate to. 100 users a day, 1 punch per person, 3 times a week, $66,000 of revenue. And that's variable. And you're charging the person who's using it. It's not fair to charge the variable fee to every single resident because some people pay for private. And then the third thing I would say is that most transfer stations, whether each point of use has somebody supervising that point. And I think the blinding flash to the obvious is they need a third person. Mm-hmm. And if you even if you could look at working with the other 2 towns, like each town takes a day, or you just have a third person at $20 an hour, that does add up. But the cost of mitigating the amount of stuff that's going into the recyclables that should not be going into, and also keeping the C&D clean, I think it would offset that if you looked at it. So those would be my input as a user.
Thank you, August. Ray, I have a question for you. What are the total, for 1 person, what are the hours worked, or is it variable?
We have 1 person that's part-time, and he does 26 hours a week. And Tyler works 30, about the same, but he works for us 1 day a week on Mondays. Usually he helps us do highway stuff. A lot of the times, like today, he went up to the transfer station, took care of the returnable bottles, stuff he can't do on the weekend because he gets buried, he brings batteries back, just brings batteries down for recycling, light bulbs. A lot of times he's actually working for the transfer station on Mondays, but we wanted to get him 40 hours so he could be a full-time employee. The other thing to keep in mind also is anytime somebody calls in sick, you have to call the highway department. And one of us has to go in and work, and that's on overtime. Anytime somebody takes a vacation, even though it's planned, I can't tell you, Todd, you're staying home Monday and Tuesday, and you're gonna work Saturday and Sunday at the transfer station for no overtime. So every time somebody's working there, one of my employees is working there, it's on overtime. And not to mention if it's a snowstorm, or if we have a storm, or any kind of stuff to happen on the highway, what do? Luckily, we haven't had that issue. We could be out plowing, and God forbid Tyler could get sick. What's gonna happen then? We close the facility? I can't cut somebody out of the highway department to go cover at the transfer station.
Well, I was gonna say that too, that you're already short-staffed enough over where you are. You know, you've already got your hands full there.
It's not all gloom and doom, it's just, I have seen for 5 years the benefit of that third person is just taking care of vacations and sick time alone.
If we had a
Or
third,
making sure stuff is clean.
if we had a third person over there, would they have, like, I think Dave and Tyler both work hours beyond the open hours of the facility. Would a third person just be the open hours, or would they be extended as well? I don't know. If there's any-
I would talk it over with them and figure it out, but I think you could probably, maybe if you did it right, you might be able to find days that are slower during the week, and maybe they could get one day off on a weekend every other weekend, and you could rotate. But then you still only have 2 people there. I would think they would want to be there just when they're open. If you can find somebody to work that minimal of amount of hours for what we pay, if we start them out at what we're paying now, you're not gonna have very much luck.
Brandon, have you looked into any of that as far as hours and wages and time cost and calculating any of that across the deficit punches, et cetera?
I have not, but I will, if that's what the board would like.
I think that's extra information we need to have to make a decision.
Yep.
I'd like to add to the
Thank you, Ray.
conversation that in Walpole, New Hampshire, and now in Harrisville, New Hampshire, which are both fairly small towns, they are now running recycling. It seems to be entirely volunteer run, their recycling operation, but they're now running their recycling at a profit. I have not made it over there yet to get a sense, to see but it's on my agenda to say, okay, how are you doing this? I know there's a very dedicated young man who set this whole system up, but they're in the same dilemma as us with limited, trash and a lot of dedicated people doing their recycling, and they have people who process right there, who actually check they weigh the recyclables, probably not on as huge a scale as a drive-through, and make sure that what's going into the different categories is clean and legit, and that their recycling is not contaminated. So I'm just saying, I plan to look into that further.
We had a similar situation with the little junk store we had there.
Exactly, the swap shop.
That didn't fare out so well, did it? In the end.
Review center.
Swap shop.
The swap shop, that's correct. And we ended up with trash in the swap shop, garbage.
Add to, if I may,
Yes, sir.
and reply to that.
I wondered why you walked away.
In reply to your statement, we used to recycle things independently. We had a tin can bin, we had a cardboard bin, we had a glass bin. The highway department was up there. We would load stuff on dump trucks, ship it all over the place. We had a baler. Back then, things were worth money. Then overseas market picked up, and you could single stream it, and they would take anything, because they don't have a lot of environmental controls over there. God knows what happened, where it went, where it is. All the facilities closed around our country because there was more money to be made shipping it away. Now we've transitioned back into single streams not working because it's contaminated. It's not clean. You don't have the attendance. If you go back to doing it yourself and having it all organized, who's to say the market's not going to go the other way again where they want the single stream? You got to be careful because you invest a lot of money into something, and then 5 years down the road that tanks. And now you're scrambling to go back. We sold everything, we switched over to single stream, and now that has tanked. That's nationwide.
What year did we do that?
Had to have been 16-ish, 15, 16. Then in 17 or 18, the market just went away. It was relatively close to after they had gotten rid of all those bales. But the market went away for everything because we didn't have the cardboard market, the plastic market. A lot of the plastic we take in is not recyclable, so that affects the market. Only 1 and 2s are recyclable. You have 1 through 7 in America. In Europe, you're only allowed to produce 1 and 2. That's huge. That's something the State House could probably work on. But it's all connected, and you can't react to one thing and put all your chips on the table on that, and then 2 years later have to go completely the other direction. You'll just be chasing your tail all the time. Recycling and trash sucks. So.
Any other questions? Comments?
No, I mean, I heard that kind of two problems were contamination and lack of help, right? And then, of course, the dollar amounts. And I'm just trying to think through that. The implications of each of those. Just like if you start charging for recycling, does your waste go up? That seems bad. If we charge too much, do we start picking it off the roads? Right, that seems bad. So just trying to think through that impact of kind of where you shift things.
And I think that's where we are too, but we also have the issue of that deficit. That deficit's too high.
Over there.
Please, Joe. The reason for that is it amplifies the voice for the any online participants, to make sure they can hear us.
A couple of observations from my visits to the transfer station. Are there radios between the two operators? Because if there aren't, I've seen people go right by Tyler and around to the C&D pile, and I know that person is a small contractor. So somehow, with simple radios, it isn't going to solve the deficit, but nonetheless, that's a small part of it. The other thing that I think public education is lacking, I'm not sure how we accomplish a good education for people that when they throw something dirty in, what it does to the waste stream. I believe I heard at one point, everything that goes over to the MRF, 30% of it ends up in Coventry. So that's, if you send over a ton, 600 pounds of it's ending out in Coventry. How you can prevent that, I don't know. But I agree that at some point, probably now, we need to start charging for recycling, and people need to realize that recycling is not free. It costs money. And the one punch every time you come in, I'm going to go buy a second barrel and only take it over every 2 times. That'll save you money in the long run. For some, it's human nature to get away with what you can get away with. But the last thing we want to create, and we've talked about this before, is more trash beside the highway.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, John. One of the things that I would absolutely hate, but I think might be necessary, I'm one of those guys, and I don't do it because I sit here. I would do it if I didn't sit here. Is when I come into the transfer station, if there's a line of cars waiting to go through the dumpster and throw their mainstream stuff away, I pull over to the right, I park, I get out, and I walk across, I throw it in, and I hand my ticket to Tyler. And I've heard several times about people getting through, going around, bypassing this and that. Maybe we need to gate that so there is one passageway through there, and you don't get through that up. You have to come in, you go up the hill by Tyler, and you can, I know it's going to back it up a little bit, but is that a start on some of the solution to gate that so that it's a single line coming through there?
If you had somebody designated at the C&D in the metal pile, that would alleviate a lot of it, because they would just pass right through and go down and get charged down there. Right now, Tyler's trying to catch them up top and charge everybody up top, because Dave does not have enough time to get punches for everybody for tires and all that.
Okay.
So that would alleviate it, having another person up there as a screen. You could get one lane, but you'd have to have 3 or 4 lanes for parking, and everybody would have to kind of merge into one.
Yep.
Because they're going to be out on the highway.
Okay.
And it's not like that all the time.
True.
Also, one thing that I've advocated and talked about in the past is do a study and see what it would look like if we didn't have a transfer station, and what it would look like if we kept it the way it is, and what it would look like if a private contractor came in and ran it. Just put out an RFP and ask somebody to come in and say, what would it cost to have somebody come in and run this facility? And that would be all on them. They would make money, they could open it up to whoever they wanted to in the world, we would charge rent. We don't know. We don't know until we see.
I've seen several different types of operations, none like ours, but then I talked to Dave and he talks about one that has basically nobody running it. I'm not sure where that is, but, you know.
Go to Windsor and they have, what, 1 day a year where you can actually get rid of C&D? And there's a line all the way around the factory to get in there to dump your stuff off. They don't even have the facilities. They have a guy that comes in with a dump truck.
But C&D isn't our biggest problem right now. I think our biggest problem right now is recycling. It's costing us money that we're not receiving, we're not getting paid for.
There's a lot of small issues that are directly staffing related as far as time and ability to do it. Copper comes in and you could sort that and make a lot more money if you had 3 bins instead of 1. There's a lot of things where you could improve.
Okay. John?
This would be a paradigm shift, but from a strictly environmental standpoint, curbside makes more sense than everybody driving to the transfer station, everybody sitting in line to just have a truck doing a route.
Until mud season. Until mud season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a social. I mean, you lose that social.
There's always something.
What season? What month was
Yeah, horrible.
August, did you have your hand up?
Oh, no, sir.
No? Okay. No, I thought before, when he put his hand up, when John did. Anybody else? Anything more on this? So I guess we've come up with a lot of more questions than really necessarily answers at this point. So we'll have to dig into this a little deeper. I also was considering a study myself, and that study was to look at other facilities and what works, what doesn't work, you know, what is working, what isn't working type thing. So those are my thoughts. Anything else from the board?
I wonder if there's a way to look at this help piece, if there's a way to temporarily hire someone to see if some of these problems actually go away, right? Finding people is hard. Like, I get that. But I do wonder if you could temporarily get someone in that position, right? To see if actually some of these problems do change. That would give you good information, because that would be the best solution, right? If we thought it was really just cleaning it up and being more accurate, and that would balance the books. But that would be, I think, a healthy solution. I think probably we do have to look at the fixed cost sticker. That makes sense to me.
And that labor issue is only one piece of the puzzle. That would help fix several things, but it's not fixing the deficit, and it's not fixing the recycling issue or anything.
Yep.
Okay.
So correct me if I'm wrong, the recycling center's open Wednesday 12 to 5, Saturday 8 to 4, and Sunday 12 to 4, correct?
Correct.
That's 13 hours, right?
What? No, I got 7 to 5 on.
Oh, 8 to 4, I'm sorry, 8 to 4 is 9 to 5, that's an 8-hour day, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's one
Yeah,
8-hour day.
Yep, 17 hours, right?
Yeah, I got 17.
17, yeah, that was my mistake, sorry. I'm tired.
That's all right.
17 times 20 is 340.
That's if you find somebody that wants to just work 17 hours a week.
On weekends.
On weekends.
So
Is it too late to raise the price of the stickers that go on the windows before taxes go out? Did we already vote on that?
no, that's where I was
haven't
just
voted on
going.
that.
So the board's going to hold a special select board meeting after the 4th of July to set the tax rate, and that's when we set the punch ticket and permit sticker fee. So at that time, between now and then, we can calculate the cost of an employee up to 20 hours a week at an hourly rate to be determined.
$25 an hour for the 17 hours would be 22,100.
You blow your pay scale out of the water though with that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sure did.
Well, I understand, but,
Just started a highway employee fully qualified for 23, so.
yeah. Yeah. I'm just giving you a number that gives you an annual that's on the high side.
Yep.
And Nate was bringing up the question about could we do something temporarily? Are there funds where we could get somebody in there for like 3 months or something like that and see what happens?
Well, the transfer station doesn't have any money.
No, we're in the hole.
Transfer station's broke. But yes,
Highway department's not.
I think as long as we,
Gee, thanks,
as long as the board increases the permit, sticker, and punch ticket, let us do some calculations before the board sets the tax rate, and we'll come up with some options, some temporary options until we,
Getting input from the other two towns would be very helpful as well.
yeah, we need to
They get a lot
get,
of good ideas.
we have a transfer station committee that consists of a select board member from each town. So,
Maybe a select board member from each town could volunteer under Rika's plan. I nominate Dave. Isn't that what he always does to you?
I'd love to supervise me.
I know he'll see this and he'll get a laugh out of it too, right? Okay. Anything else on this? We still got a lot to get through. Ray, thank you for all your input on this.
Brandon did an
Brandon.
awesome job on that report, by the way. You
Yeah.
guys, you just need to understand all the bits and pieces that affect each other. And he's done a really good job with that report explaining it, so thank you, Brandon.
thank you.
John, you're up. Legislative update.
Oh, you've got a notebook.
Yeah, I'm lucky I remember anything anymore. I'm going to go over mostly the acts that affect the town of Weathersfield the most. And I'm going to start with which was H 875, which is an ethics bill. You're not going to like this one. And I'll tell you right now, I didn't vote for it. It was a long bill. The first 2/3 of it were for state employees. That's fine. 20 pages of it were for municipal. As the act is written, the following people are going to have to go through mandatory ethics training: the budget committee, cemetery commissioners, the town clerk, the tax collector, the department heads, listers, moderator, planning commission, road commissioner, manager, and treasurer. We're going to have to go through mandatory training every 3 years, and new employees will have to do it within 120 days of employment. I'm going to say this once: there's no enforcement in the bill. Take that for what it's worth.
What is the name of that bill, John?
Pardon me?
What's the name of that bill? again?
Ethics.
Ethics?
Yeah, if you look up ethics, it's 20 pages. I think you really ought to take the time to read it so you understand exactly what they're planning. They're forming a ethics commission that will be composed of, I don't remember exactly who's on it, but any complaints would go to them. They're the ones that are supposed to come up with the training criteria and hand it off to you guys to implement. And I worked with VLCT on this when testimony was being given. And I also, very seldom I stand up and speak on the floor, but I did on this one because I think that the towns are perfectly capable of setting their own ethics standards. I think our ethics policy could use some fine tuning and maybe a little more emphasis on some of the areas that, but I think it's overreaching, especially to a lot of the ones that I just listed off that are already volunteers. Now you're going to be telling them, we don't trust you to do the right thing. Therefore, we're going to tell you how to do the right thing. Most of it revolves around conflict of interest, and it very clearly spells it out. So does our ethics policy already. But I will say that every year you read somewhere in the state where some town has got themselves into a pickle because somebody's doing something they're not supposed to. But take a look at the small towns. Baltimore is a good example. The ones up the North Kingdom are even better examples. They got 3 board members running the town, taking care of everything. They happen to own a backhoe, and they can't work for the town. I mean, it's just, the way it's written, it is overreaching. I'm going to go quickly over a bunch of the acts that I think have created the most stir, and the ones that affect the town of Weathersfield the most. Act 13 prohibits paramilitary training anywhere in the state of Vermont. That was a result of what happened over in Dorset at Slate Ridge. Act 18, which is the green heat standard that really was from last year, but it's biennium, so it's still on the books. This coming year, the PUC will come forward with more accurate numbers, of what effect this is going to have on the fuel dealers. And at that time, the legislature will have a chance to axe the whole thing if they want. Act 24, and this could affect our first responders, is crimes against healthcare workers. If somebody attacks one of our firefighters while they're at a residence, right now, the police could not arrest that person. The way this bill is written, that person could be arrested on the word of the healthcare provider. So it tightens up and makes the workplace a little bit safer for our healthcare workers. Act 26 is a program to enhance cancer screening for our firefighters, and there's money in so that firefighters can get a benchmark of their health, and they can more closely track if someone contracts a cancer that may be related to their service. Act 30 tightens up some of the controls on our sheriffs. We had an incident up in one of the northern counties where the state, the sheriff was acting inappropriately. That bill is going to put a little more teeth into the ability to keep a handle on what the sheriffs are up to. The Act 34, 35, 36, and 37 are created healthcare compacts for different categories of healthcare workers. It will allow somebody from Maine, somebody from Massachusetts, for that matter, somebody from Nevada, to come into Vermont and work without going through there'll be certain criteria, but it makes it more transparent and easier to get healthcare workers to transfer to Vermont. Steve, you'll like this one, and so will the town manager. Act 106 was the abatement and tax sales. When this bill was originally written, I think I come in and spoke about it already, it really would have put a hamstring on the tax collector and the way he could operate. After the Senate got done with it, it was watered down significantly. The only major change is you won't be able to start a tax sale for 1 year after taxes become delinquent. So the bills that were due in May, if they don't pay it, you wouldn't be able to act on it until the following May. Under tax sales, and under abatement, I'm not sure how many of you have sat in on when we abate taxes and we get that long list of pennies and the total's about $100. That responsibility for abating those taxes now falls with you guys. So it doesn't have to go through the Board of Abatement. Okay, Steve? Oh, he left. That's too bad.
He snuck away.
He was the only one that voted against that because there was no provision in the abatement language to abate taxes for that reason. Act 120, people are calling it a gun control law. What it does, right now, any of us could send away for parts, assemble a gun, and it won't have a serial number on it. You still could do that, but you're going to have to take it to a registered gunsmith and have a serial number attached to it. Let me explain why I voted in favor of it. The guy that sits right in front of me is muttering away that it was just unnecessary gun control. So I told him, I said, okay, you go ahead and assemble your gun, use it yourself. What happens to it when you die? There's no registration for that gun. It hits the open market. Act 122, I voted no. The state of Vermont is going to take on big oil to get them to pay for climate mitigation of damages. Act 128 tightens up the penalties and ability to prosecute for retail theft. We don't have a huge problem here. Some of the more urban areas definitely do. Act 135 creates a pilot project to set up automated speeding devices in work zones. It's an experiment to see how it works. So, and if it does work, just because the cop isn't there or he's not watching, you still could get a ticket. Act 148 included more language and more money for state aid to highways. And this one affects the transfer station. Act 51 and Act 152 is going to require that all batteries and battery-containing devices don't hit the waste stream. Act 153, this could affect our town at some point, is timber theft. There are some loggers within the state that don't operate under the most scrupulous conditions. They'll sneak over onto somebody else's property. They'll not pay the landowner for what they took or not do what they said they were going to do. Act 167, the state of Vermont, under the Department of Safety, will have a animal welfare commissioner, just one person, that animal rights, animal welfare problems can be brought to. I don't have the act number for this, but this I thought was an excellent bill, and it only passed on the last day of the session, was the right to repair. A lot of equipment, and unfortunately this didn't go as far as I thought it should. I thought it should go to all equipment. Right now, it just goes to timber harvesters and farmers. If you had a John Deere tractor, John Deere could say we're the only ones that can fix it. The way the bill is written, they have to sell you at reasonable cost the software and the parts so you can fix it yourself. Right now, there are manufacturers that just absolutely refuse to do that. Your choice is to take it to the dealer, and that's it. The one that was the most controversial at the end of the session was the yield bill. It's the one that scaring the bejesus out of people about what their tax bills are going to look like. I voted in favor of that, and I think everybody deserves an explanation why. I didn't feel that the governor's proposal was a fiscally responsible response. What he was proposing was that we empty the reserve in AOE, which is required to be at 5% of their total. So he was going to empty it, which we would have had to make up at some point, and which would only, the analogy I give it is, it's the same thing as paying the minimum on your credit card. It buys you time, but it doesn't help your balance at all. His proposal would have only kicked the can down farther. School costs are not going to go down in the next year. So if you transfer expenses farther down the road, you're guaranteeing even a higher increase later. It's hard for people to understand. I think the thing that we really need to emphasize, and once again, it comes down to public education, to make sure that everybody that can is taking advantage of income sensitivity when they file their taxes, how you educate the public to make sure that they understand that and that they can utilize it. I've heard a number that only 30% of the people that are eligible are utilizing income sensitivity when they file their taxes. That was about it there were 171 acts. Those are the highlights for me that I thought. There's a ton of them that just minor effect on the operation of the state. If you got any questions, feel free to shoot them to me.
What was the number on that last bill? The yield bill?
Sorry, I don't have the number written down.
It's eight
872? 882?
87.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
okay. What bill was it that had the safe injection sites?
Pardon me?
The safe injection sites? Did that pass? It did, right?
It did.
Interesting. That's another one I did not vote on for. And it passed, the governor's veto was overridden in the House by a fairly substantial margin. It went to the Senate. It failed in the Senate, in other words, not to override by one vote. But there's a rule that you can change your vote within 24 hours. One senator changed his vote. Yes, it passed. And I think it's a huge mistake.
No, I agree. Any questions?
And it siphons off over $1 million that could be used for treatment into a facility that's going to sit in Burlington. That does not help the southern part of the state, doesn't help Bellas Falls, it doesn't help Springfield, it doesn't help anybody south of Burlington. Maybe Burlington has the biggest issue, but they're not the one that have the only issue.
Doesn't help anybody that needs help.
No, it does not. Well, the big, no, okay. I think we're on the same
Live,
page.
but it doesn't let them live.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Any comments from the boards?
One vote, one senator, and I shouldn't even say this, he was a Republican, no less.
I heard that. I did hear
And
that.
somebody got to him, I'll guarantee you that.
I can't understand.
I don't either.
It seems like that first bill that had the ethics thing in there is something maybe some of the people up in Montpelier should be looking at. There should be some training for some of them.
Like I said, read it, there's no enforcement language.
Yeah.
Take your pick.
Hang on, John. Any questions for John?
Yes. On 887, what was the percent of the property tax increase that you and the supermajority voted for?
13.8
Thank you.
is what the yield went up. That doesn't mean that every community went up that much, because ours is not gonna go up that much, but it's somewhere south of that. Some towns are gonna be even higher. Some towns actually, Ireland's a good example, theirs was actually gonna go down and they still were defeating their school budget. Education's expensive, it's that simple. The way we do our education, the way we fund our education is flawed. But the state of Vermont is a small state, we only have so many resources, and part of the yield bill was also to create a commission to study different ways to fund education, and I'll go back to what I just said. You can't shake the tree too many times or shuffle the cards around, the results are still gonna be the same. There's no magic bullet to help with the high cost of education. And you can rest assured that, we already heard it, you guys are gonna have to deal with it. Healthcare is gonna go up, salaries are gonna go up, supplies are going up. I'm a proponent that we need to take down town barriers, town lines for education, and not have so many supervisory unions. There's too many in the state. We only have 88,000 students total, and I think we have 16 or 18 supervisory unions, all with a lot of overhead. And many cities have 400,000 kids with one organization running it. There is some language that allows, doesn't require, that allows consortiums of districts to get together for purchasing. It probably has the potential to save a little bit, but it isn't going to be the silver bullet. I mean, they really need to look at everything they can to try to cut down on education costs.
Thank you, John. Any other questions for John? Thanks again, Joe. Next up, ARPA proposal, trail improvements. Who has that, Brandon?
Wondered why you were here.
I'm
Welcome,
gonna
Ryan.
pass this around. This is a Weathersfield directory.
Oh,
from
yeah, I've got
2017.
one. Yep, I've seen it. I've got mine still.
So it's part of what inspired the project that I'll describe to you. So initially, a while ago, so this is on behalf of the Conservation Commission. They submitted a proposal for an interpretive trail. Basically, in the town forest, interpretive trails are typically signs or some kind of a brochure with sign locations that you would go to. And at each station, you learn something about how forest functions or how humans manage the forest or wildlife, plants, all kinds of different things. So it's a good way for someone who doesn't have a background in ecology or something like that, who goes out to walk their dog or ride their bike or something, to learn about the environment that they're in. And so what was proposed was about half of what was voted on at the meeting where these ARPA funds were, I guess, not approved, but proposed. So what was, the motion was for $15,000. And one of the challenges with the town forest is access. And so it's not of that much value to residents if they can't get to it, other than drive around to Windsor and go into the state park, and it's kind of a long walk to get there and you're on the power lines. So rather than try and come up with a $15,000 project for the town forest, in talking with Brandon to see how this was structured, we'd like to think more about the trails around town. And part of the problem, it's not really a problem, but one of the things that we've recognized is there isn't, a lot of people don't know about what resources are available to them. There's lots of trails and places that people can go that are underutilized. So the thought is to have an inventory, assessment, and mapping done for these resources, so people know what trails are close to them, where they can park, different things like that. So, the reason it's related to the directory was, well, we were talking about directories in general, about how can we inform people about what business services are in town, what farms you can go to get food and different things. But the idea was to have a townwide trail guide that basically has a map of each property with the trails, where you can park, that kind of thing, that's connected with a town directory. So in addition to all the different resources that are available to residents, trails are one of those things. So what's really proposed is that's kind of a separate piece. All of the ARPA funds would be towards the trail work and mapping and stuff. So part of that guide is an inventory. So that will be voluntary or volunteers. The Conservation Commission and any other people who know about trails will basically come up with a list of what should be included in the guide. And then working with a mapping contractor, a trail designer or trail contractor of some sort, either volunteers would collect the GPS data or the mapper would go out and collect the trail data, put it on a map. And Mount Escutney Regional Commission was one that we reached out to. Can you provide this type of service? So they said that was something that they can do. And then address some of the issues that we know are ongoing. So in the town forest, there's at least 2 places where trails cross wetlands, and the state wetland ecologist has on the property 2 violations, where the trail either needs to be rerouted or a crossing needs to be permitted and done properly. So that's one of the things we'd like to address with these funds, is to try and deal with those violations, as well as other places that aren't in the town forest where those things might exist, but we don't really know about them. So the inventory, mapping, wetland crossing. So part of the cost would be in the guide itself, so graphic design and printing of the booklet. We reached out to Doolittle, who did this one, to get similar costs, and so a lot of this stuff is estimates. One, not knowing whether the board is receptive to this idea, and then the other, what the scale is. So after this, we'll be able to gather more information on what those costs are going to be. But the booklet itself, that I think that was a 30-something page. What we were told in the same style, which is, I think it's legal size paper folded over. The estimate for printing would be, and this is for 500 copies, would be $900 approximately. Plus the graphic design fee would be $560. We have some other rough numbers, estimates for the trail contractor and mapping based on Mount Scottney Regional Commission's hourly rate and what it seems like it might take. We basically said $1,000 for the mapping, $800 for the trail contractor, which is a very rough estimate depending on whether or not they do any kind of remediation for the issues that they come across. So that's the trail guide. And then trail improvements are another part of this. So with the $15,000, approximately $3,000 to $3,500 would be that trail guide piece. And then the remainder would be in trail improvements. So there's the trail assessment that the trail contractor would do, stream crossing design, they have to get it permitted, and that's really all hourly type work. Any existing trail redesign, so if there's a section of trail that's straight uphill, a lot of times to make it more user-friendly, they'll do switchbacks so that you can get to where you're going, less erosion, things like that. And then something else that's been discussed in the past with the Town Forest and the Scottney Trails Association is some new trails. They put in a beginner's mountain bike loop. They had talked at one point about an intermediate level in another area on that lower side, below the power lines, not up on the steep hill. And then we'd also like to have a route that can get you up onto the steeper, higher level parts of the Town Forest, it's an amazing place, but it's hard to get to. There's pretty much some old logging roads that you can take up. So a proper trail would be useful for seeing some of that stuff. And then the remainder would go into the interpretive signs like we had originally proposed. So the assumption is that between the trail guide and the trail work, we would still come in under the $15,000. And so understood that that's the cap. We basically have some flexibility after the trail guide, which is really the major project, which leads to other things. And so in addition to the trail assessment, or with the trail assessment, there might be future projects that come out of it. So if they identify things, we don't have to fix all the problems immediately or build out any plans that they do. It could be ideas for the future, things like that. So that's that proposal.
Okay, so your proposal is asking for $15,000 for trail improvements.
Correct.
Do you need a moment?
No, it's okay.
Like that was already approved.
Okay. All right, that's what I was gonna get to. That's already been taken care of. That's just the update on, that was asked for.
Right.
Okay.
Can I ask?
Yes.
I know you talked about the access to the town forest, but this is not actually dealing with the access to the town forest to make it easier.
No, so we've had conversations a little bit with landowners, and it's really, it's kind of a sore subject, and it's something that's been lingering, kind of nagging people for a long time. So it didn't seem like there was a quick solution to that. I still think it's worth having the town forest continue to be maintained and utilized from the people, especially mountain bikers, who can get out there kind of easily, and hunters. That's probably one of the bigger users of the property. But there hasn't been a real solution to that. Although in the trail assessment, it would likely address that and say, this is one of the biggest barriers to the value of this property, and the town should think about ways to gain access.
Rika, Kelly, anything? Any questions?
We're
Thank
still,
you. Whoops,
sorry.
go ahead.
We're still in the process of trying to gain access. So we haven't dropped that. It's just,
And can you fill in a little bit more of sort of where does that stand right now?
in discussions, I guess. We had agreement from a landlocked parcel, to go through that parcel if we waive the taxes on the parcel, which is $18 a quarter, for 20 years. But after, it doesn't add up to a lot. I think it's,
No, it doesn't.
but since that time, her son has passed away. And I haven't reached back out to her because us three together were talking about that.
Part of it is just managing relationships, and we don't want to come to these landowners and say, hey, we would like to use your property, and then it goes nowhere. So, yeah, I think it's to some degree a matter of waiting for the right circumstances and doing what we can with what we have.
Yeah. Any other questions for Ryan? Thank you, Ryan.
Okay.
We appreciate it. Number 10 was tabled, naming the waterways. That was because Mr. Fuller was not able to attend, and we voted to move that to the next agenda,
Okay.
just so you know.
Thank you.
Second reading, Martin Memorial Hall Rules and Regulations. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks.
We don't want to read it out loud again, do we?
No,
Okay.
no, we do not.
Could just do a replay of it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Are there any concerns or discussions about the document at this time? Did we have some questions that were coming up on this? That was Dave bringing up any stuff? I'm just questioning, do we want to move to the third reading?
I would recommend that we move to the third reading. In the packet, I included the draft rules and regulations, the legal opinion from town council, the warranty deed, and the prior rules and regulations document that was found in the file. The rules and regulations are consistent with the legal opinion and the deed, so.
Okay.
I make a motion that we just move it to a third reading.
Motion's been made. Do I hear second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. That's by Kelly and seconded by Nate. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. It's unanimous. We'll move to the third reading. Town manager update.
All right, I'll try to keep it quick. The first item is Derek Gurney was elected fire chief of the Ascutney Fire Department, so he's officially the fire chief on this side of town. We're in the process of having discussions about expenditures, getting him accustomed to the budget process, policies, capital planning, technology, and fire services software. So that's kind of what's going on right now with fire services.
And just out of curiosity, who is he? I'm not familiar with his name.
He was the deputy fire chief under Darren, so he was the second in command. And as far as who is he, his family owns Gurney and Brothers Construction Company.
Oh.
Let me see. Darren was a fire warden as well. Has that slot been filled in some way?
Josh Doffin's deputy fire warden, so they're
Yeah.
just they've taken that over for now.
Okay.
And we'll soon be discussing
Okay.
the appointment of a fire warden. But a deputy fire warden is the next in line, so technically Josh Doffin's the fire warden of the town.
Okay, thank you.
And anything for like any requests for burn permits, we're all in a group text. So those everybody gets notified on both sides of town regarding burn permits, which is the primary function of
So who
Yes.
does one call now for a burn permit?
just one call.
Who does somebody call?
Who do you call now?
Okay, Josh Doffin, Michael Spalding,
Okay,
and both of their numbers are up on the website.
okay.
And then basically, whoever gets called, they put the address into the group text, so both fire departments know the burn's occurring. So if somebody sees smoke over there, they know.
As
Fire trucks don't show up.
as we move through the rest or the remainder of the town manager's update, please save questions till he's completed, and we'll come back to any topics.
Okay. I'll run through the rest of it.
Yeah.
FY '25 grand list came in. Overall, the municipal grand list grew by 19,000. So it didn't go down. That's good. The FY '25 tax rate, like I was saying earlier, we should plan for a meeting the week of July 8th to July 11th. We really could do it next week, but it's, the 4th of July week. I don't think we need to have a meeting next week to set the tax rate. I think it can wait until Tuesday of the following week. So everyone can take the time for the holiday. The legal process for laying out, altering, reclassifying, or discontinuing town highways. Olivia passed out a copy of this. That's like the long version of, the text straight from Vermont statutes. But I'll just go through how to do it really quick. So we receive a petition to lay out, alter, reclassify, or discontinue a road in writing, or the select board can initiate that process by its own motion. So when we go back to Meadow Lane, although we don't have a petition, what he was asking is that the select board make a motion to initiate those proceedings on its own. The second thing that happens is we warn a public hearing. We warn a public hearing and a site examination. The site examination occurs at a time and date the select board decides, and we all meet at the site and we examine the road. That requires 30-day notice. We notify abutters via certified mail. We post on the website here at Martin Memorial Hall, at the Perkinsville Post Office, and at the library. We also have to post it in the Valley News. So the entire public hearing is considered warned once we meet those preliminary steps. After the site examination, the board holds a public hearing and determines, this is the key piece here, out of all that text that you have. The board has to determine whether the public good, necessity, and convenience of the inhabitants of the municipality require the highway to be laid out, altered, or reclassified. So throughout the entire public hearing, the site examination, that's the one thing that we should all be focused on if we, or through any road proceeding. The town may decide to do a survey if the road is not easily identifiable and pin the location. If the road is easily identifiable, we don't have to do that. We don't have to take that step, but we can if we decide to. Or you decide to, excuse me. Within 60 days after the public hearing, we return the original petition. The select board drafts up a report of your findings and then provides the manner of notifying the parties with the survey or discontinuance to the town clerk's office to record. And that's the whole process. It generally takes 30 to 90 days. I think we just discontinued one last year, didn't we?
Yeah.
Highway 95.
Yeah, Highway 95. There was no road. So we went through the entire process and the select board voted to discontinue that road. And then it went away.
Are you done with your report?
No. Couple more things. So meeting room improvements, we are in the process of making this meeting room completely wireless. So we've purchased all of the equipment, which includes wireless microphones, an 8-channel mic line mixer, recording interface, wireless transmitters, and a receiver kit. In the last meeting, I shared your same thought, Nate, when you had mentioned, sharing the packet with the public so that we can have it up at the same time. So this will make that possible. We purchased 2 monitors, so the materials will be on one monitor, and then Sapper and Zoom will be on the other monitor. We really wanted to get it set up before this select board meeting, but it just wasn't possible because some of the stuff that we purchased, see, Chester's doing the same exact thing, and they purchased the same equipment, and there was some flaws and issues with some of the equipment, so we're returning that, and SAP has recommended new equipment, different equipment. So we hope to have the whole thing set up for the next meeting.
Great.
It eliminates all the wires, which are currently a problem. Both to set up, they're not efficient, and they're a trip hazard. And VOSHA has commented on them in the past. So it's time to get rid of them. Excavator grant work. So we received a $36,000 grant from Grants and Aid to do highway work. The purpose of the grant is to provide funding to bring hydraulically connected roads up to Act 64 standards. This year, we're looking to do work on Golden Ridge Road. Last year, the select board waived the purchasing policy and allowed us to hire an excavator by the hour and separate in a separate machine with a hammer. So I'm gonna let Ray, you take it from here. I don't know what the recommendation will be this year. I think the funding needs to be spent by September.
Is this an action item, or is this part of your town manager update?
It's part of my town manager update. I'm not sure if it needs.
It will need action because I need to get moving. The deadline's coming up. If I'm gonna have to go through the bid process, I need to know as soon as possible so I can send that out. So, anyway, this is another grant for hydraulically connected roads provided by the state. We started a project up on Golden Ridge last year. We did 18 segments. It was a pretty good success. We got a lot done for the money we had. We hired a 48,000-pound excavator and a machine with a hammer, separate machines, a lot of ledge on Parker Hill. Well, we call it Parker Hill, but it's Golden Ridge. One of the first hill, and then the second hill, we had some pretty deep culverts to put in. This project is what we call Gray Fox and Anthony's Hill, and it's above, if you're heading out Golden Ridge, I don't know if you know where Lycuses live or not, we got 2 pretty steep hills next to a dry hydrant. It's the first one, and then the second one's further out by Morningside. A lot of ledge, continuous problems with erosion. This grant, if I can hire the right size machines, I should be able to get both hills done for the money. The bid process works really well when I have a project that, like paving or a box culvert or something that I'm hiring a contractor to come in and do the whole job, and we're limited on what we're doing there. This project is just the machine to do the digging. We provide the trucks, we provide all the gravel, everything else is at our cost and reimbursed through the grant. It seems to be the most efficient way to do the work is by the hour. I know a lot of people get nervous because they think somebody's gonna go really slow and make a lot of money and not get a lot done. We've proven over the years that this is the most efficient way to do it. And if our crew and myself are there and we have the good contractors that we have in town and in the area working with us, we seem to really get a lot done. I'm hoping that we can just hire the individual if they're available from last year, or I have a couple other people of mine that have done work with us in the past that might be able to help. Just want to know what the board's feeling is. Again, this is a grant. I do manage the grants very closely and try to get the most work done for the money I have. And again, I'm very proud of the fact, I'm trying not to brag, but I really need to. Most people are getting 5-6 segments done for 30K. We did 18 segments last year for 32,000, roughly 32 to 34,000. So it was a phenomenal success. Regional Planning's been talking to us about it, and they're kind of excited for us as well. So I'm hoping that we can go forward with this, and I understand the bid process and how it helps the town. I think if we did this as a bulk rate and asked somebody to come in and do the digging, it's going to be, I believe it would affect us negatively in getting the work done.
What was the process you used for last year?
Last year, we approached a contractor, we hired him by the hour, and he also had another vendor that he subbed out to by the day for the hammer, which is a huge machine with its own hammer to pound out all the ledge. So I had set rates. As I progressed on the project, I could work closely with regional planning and the state, and I could add segments on. You have to have a pre-plan, and once you get that work done, usually you're done. But if you have money left over, you could quickly work with them and get other sites approved and just keep moving. So we did the first hill, what was the initial project, and then we added on 12 or 14 additional segments, 12 segments on Golden Ridge on the big hill with the same money. We're able to react and be able to do that. It takes a lot of finagling and knowing, you have to have it all planned out ahead of time and then approve it as you go. You don't want to put out 18 segments and only get 10 done. That doesn't look great. They're not pleased when that happens. So we try to start small and add on as we go.
The other way this works is you contract it. You have the initial plan, you contract it for the money, and you get the initial plan done, and you're done, and the money's gone. So, yeah. Does that sum it up about?
In a nutshell, yes. Yeah. We started out the first year, 5 years ago. We hired a contractor to come in. We assisted with some work. They had an employee. They subbed out a truck. We got 3 segments done. The next year we did 7 segments. Then we did 8, 9 segments. And we've evolved the process into hiring just the excavator by the hour. We pay all the equipment, or we get a discount on culverts. We get no taxes buying stone. So if we had the contractor buy the stone, they're the middleman.
Yeah.
They're going to charge us extra, and they're going to charge the tax and shipping and all that. I can then use that labor for my trucks as my share for the grant, because there is a 20% share. It doesn't seem like much, but $6 or $7 grand, I can get an hourly rate for the truck and get rid of that cost.
And you haven't used the bid process for how many years? Last year you did not use the bid process?
Last year, and I believe the year before, there was another grant that we didn't. It was allowed because we ran out of time that year. During COVID, we really got behind the ball on that grant. But we've evolved it over the last 5 years. Initially, I wanted to send out like a rate thing every year to get rates for excavators by the hourly. So I know different size machines, and they're on a list, and they have all their information in the office and everything's signed up. So I can call you and say, hey, I have a washout, can you please help me on this? And another person can go to another road and it's all done. I think eventually that's the best way to go. Annually, you send out the rates, you get their new insurance paperwork, they're in the system. If there's an emergency, you already have people you can call instead of scrambling during a flood. Last year, Timmy helped us out over on Oscutney Basin. He was already in the system. I called him, I knew his hourly rates. Another thing that helps with is sometimes you get people boosting the rates up as soon as they hear FEMA. And if you already have them in your system at $160 an hour for this size machine, you're kind of locked in for the year.
I look at this a little bit differently than, the purchasing policy for me is to protect. It's kind of like back to the audit stuff. We have a general fund, we have a highway fund, we have a certain amount of money to spend and do things with. And we use the purchasing policy to stay within the budget means.
Hear that.
I've already spoken with Ray and Brendan about this. When it comes to a grant, either Brandon or Ray, actually sit down, take the time, apply for a grant, and we receive these funds. I don't want to say they're not taxpayer funds, they are, but they're coming typically from either the state or the federal government, not our local municipal body. And so I look at them as the administrators of the grant and prefer to allow them to function and administer the grant in the most efficient, common sense way, and that's what this seems like to me. That's my opinion.
That makes sense to me. My worry is about equitable access to contractors that live in town, right? Like just making sure that which I think is part of the bid process, right? Is like, hey, you want to put your name in the hat or not put that name in the hat, and just giving people fair access to work that the town has. That's what's going on in my head.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well.
And doing it this way and approaching only the people I know is the only negative I can see. I think to fix that going forward is we send out a rate sheet in the beginning of every year to everybody know. We advertise the rate sheet online. Anybody who's a contractor, if everybody in this room is a contractor and 10 of you want to fill it out or 5 of you want to fill it out and send it to me with your list of equipment, you get in our system, and then every year we send it back and ask for an update.
I think that'd be.
I think that would be the way to fix it in the long term. If there has to be some kind of a policy tweak in order to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because right now, it's very strict. You have to have pricing, which I get for a project where you're hiring a contractor to do all the work. I just need a service. I need like one part of a service to do the job.
Okay, so we're in the middle of the town manager's update. I just, you need action on this tonight, Ray?
I would prefer if I could.
Okay.
That way I can get the process going.
If the board does take action, can it take action under any other business?
Yes.
Okay. I just have a couple more things. Highway Department generator. So the Highway Department needs to acquire a diesel generator. We've talked about this before. We currently have a 5,000 kilowatt generator at the Highway Department. It's not enough. That's sort of like a Band-Aid fix to do something. But the crew needs to be able to operate the lights, the compressor, the furnace, the doors, the water pump, and fuel pump for the diesel tank during power outages. So just an example, not too long ago, the crew went to the highway garage and the electricity was off. And they couldn't open the doors to remove the plow trucks. And I would say, can you give an, I don't want to, can you explain that a little bit?
I'll fess up to it.
Okay.
Please be careful.
Yeah. So, right now, we did not have a generator hooked up at the time. When the power goes out, the shop is dead, obviously. We have power doors on the main part of the shop, so the grader, the loader, 2 dump trucks cannot get out of the building, and there's a little rope you gotta pull on the door. These are very tall doors. You have to get on a ladder, climb the ladder, pull the cord, get down off the ladder. The grader was up against the door. I couldn't get on a ladder to get in there. I didn't want anybody else climbing up on it, so I climbed up on it, reached up, used the stick, pulled the thing, had to climb back down. A lot of people were really upset with having to go through that process in the dark with a cell phone light or a flashlight. Coming at 3 o'clock in the morning, we're trying to go out and fix roads, and you spend half an hour to 45 minutes stumbling around in the dark. Luckily, nobody got hurt, but it could have happened, so I understand the process. Thank you. I just want to rectify it so we can actually run the shop. This generator would be big enough to run the shop. We might not be able to run everything all at once, but with the 5,000 kilowatt, we can't run the lights and hit the doors at the same time because it just about kills it. Never mind the heat and all that stuff,
So we have an estimate. We're proposing, and I've talked to the highway crew, and Ray has recommended as well a diesel generator, a 20 kilowatt standby diesel generator with a 32 gallon diesel tank. Total cost is $21,750. I don't need any action on this tonight. I wanted to bring it up and then potentially address it before winter. Is that a good?
Yeah, I mean, we've lost power like 5 times so far this year alone, so it's getting worse.
But yeah, I understand. Do you need action like,
No,
Okay.
no, but I mean, I would assume not wait, because a lot of people get generators in the fall, and the supply seems to diminish.
so this was one of the things that was an ARPA request. So we'll come more prepared at the next meeting. I have two more things, Mike.
You
Sorry,
said that
my
last
time-
time.
My,
Your
my
2
town
minutes
manager
are up.
reports is a little long. So Martin Memorial Hall humidity issues, I passed out Heritage Engineering's. If you could read that, and at the next meeting, we'll put that on the agenda.
Is this different than the last one he gave us?
No, it's the same one. I
Oh,
just,
that's what I thought when I read it. I said, this is like the same.
I think,
Okay.
I don't think Nate and Rika were on the board yet, so I wanted to give them the opportunity to read that.
Okay.
And then Multiple Road, so we did a ton of research and we determined that it is a town road. It's in the select board minutes as a town road. In 2006, the select board held a public hearing to reclassify that road. And during that time, the select board voted unanimously to deem it a Class 3 road from Town Highway 66, right before Mr. Newton's residence, and then a Class 4 section to the highway mile markers. Everything seems like it's going well. Mr. Charest has offered, he owns lots 6, 7, and 8. So he has offered to put a turnaround at the end of the Class 4 section so that emergency vehicles can turn around. Right now, where are you guys
I'm turning around in a private residence at the top of the hill at the end of the Class 3 road.
So you're not going all the way down the class, so, and 6, 7, and 8 may be developed in the future. So we may need to put a turnaround over there, so prior to that lot being sold, I think.
Like 6 and 7 are sold.
6 and 7 are sold.
I got some people on the 8.
Can you go to the podium? I'm sorry.
Gotta speak, I know you can speak louder than that. I've heard you. Just ask your wife.
So I sold lot 6 and 7 have been sold. They're planning on putting houses in. I've got a couple individuals that are interested in the lot 8, which one's proposing 3 houses there. And when I spoke with town manager, I just thought now's the time when I've got control of that land to put a turnaround down there. Because right now, if you put a fire truck down there, you might as well order a new one. You're not getting it back. And if town wants to go to plow down there or something, you just don't have the room unless you get a turnaround in there. It's like I talked to the Ray at the highway, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. If you do that, don't do a bullnose. Do it in and out. Plows are always angled to the right. Drive in, plow, drive out. That's but that's all I got.
So if you're gonna put a turnaround down there, it's a Class 4 road. We don't typically maintain those. Any other thoughts on that?
So I'm thinking, when we reclassify our road, it would either need to be by petition. So I'm not sure, Mr. Charest, do you know if there's gonna be a petition circulated on the residents, with the residents on the Class 4 road, or how do you think that's gonna?
I don't know if they're gonna put something together. That just closed on the other 2 lots the other day, so, and I haven't spoken much with one of the individuals on 8. There's about 1,500 feet there, and it's like, I had just mentioned that regardless of who's plowing or not plowing down there, it's like, I just mentioned I was gonna do an easement on that 8, because eventually you're gonna need it. I try to plan ahead, not be, look back and say, geez. Like I said, fire apparatus, I don't care, even to Mr. Newton's house. You're gonna back out of that road. There's just nothing up there to, the original turnaround by the Hill Farm, I believe it is. It's just not set up. There's no decent place. Once you take that left out there, there's no decent place to turn anything around. And it's like I said, well, I got the land, it'd just make common sense for me to put an easement in there. If the town doesn't use it, don't use it. If you use it, it's gonna be there. It should be there, because, like I said, I'm just thinking of fire, whatever. You've had 2 new houses built out at the very end. On this, what's right now is section class 4, one built in 18, one in 22. You back up 400 yards, you got one being built up there now, another one. I know the lot 6 and 7 I sold. One of them's planning on one house, the other one's planning on 1, possibly 2 more homes. Lot 8 I have is 20 acres. One individual was talking possibly 3 homes. A lot of houses out there. Be good to have, be able to get apparatus out there and make sure everybody's do their job.
I think she was just asking, what road were we talking about?
Old Bow Road.
Yep. I know.
Yeah.
So I think between now and like the next select board meeting, you can determine whether there's gonna be a petition and let me know. And if not, we can ask the select board to do it on their own petition, which would trigger a site examination so that the board can see
What's
it.
the petition for?
To reclassify the road to a class 3.
I think the first thing we need to do is take him up on his offer for the easement and
I-
get that hammered out before he sells the property.
Yeah.
Just my thought.
I absolutely would appreciate that.
I was, well, it's one of those, I don't believe I need the board's permission on that. I was gonna do it anyways,
Yeah,
because it's
I
like, it's
know.
one of those, it's like, look out for your town. It needs it. You need that up there. But, thank you, Ray. And I did talk with Ray and, Brandon about that, of, make sure we got room, because it was like, do you have enough room? I said, take more. I figured, I'd planned on, you have a 50-foot right-of-way down to the interstate now. My proposal was, give you another 60 feet. If you need 70, let's take it. It's not, I'm not losing anything, or the prospective buyer is not losing anything. If anything, you might save their house if it's ever on fire or something. You just want a good place to turn.
And as a note, with more than 2 houses, you have to have a 50-foot driveway
Yeah.
going in there, so that would help them in the long run.
Yeah, it's just, it makes sense to do it that way. And it's like, I don't know what the best route is. If you want the, get with the buyers of this other one, do a petition, or if the town just wants to look to take over I think it's like 1,500 feet from, that's a guess, 1,800 feet max from, Mr. Newton's house down to this, lot 8. Would you think?
1320 is a quarter mile, right? Drag
But
racing.
there's 2 separate things going on. One is the easement for the turnaround, get that hammered out. And then,
Yes.
Then you have time to figure out what you're gonna do with the road.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. That's good.
And we did go out there, Ray, myself, Mr. Charest, and Watkins' attorney, we walked all the way to the highway mile markers and discovered that they're still in place and that there's a fence up. And we need to stake where the turnaround would be. So I think get the easement, stake it, and then go from there.
So you're gonna put that on your Mylar or whatever it is, you're gonna take care of that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that takes care of the easement anyway. Once he does the easement, then the rest is either up to us by petition or action
Right,
of the
I
board.
just need to get with, or I'd like to have, rather than me just go up, I'll do it here, like to get, the board to support, highway or the town manager, whoever, to go up and say, this would work for us the best. There's plenty of land up there, that's why I'd like to, when I go to stake it out, say, if you move it this way, it'd be easier for us, if we do something
Well,
down there.
that would be Ray and probably the fire departments, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I could work with them as well.
Okay, as long as, like I said, I just don't want anybody, I'm asking, if the board's like, do you support them going to, this would work best for us, tell me where it would work best. That way we can do it the way it works best for the town.
Sure.
I'm willing to do that if you guys are all right with me working
Yeah.
on private property, putting up grade stakes. I'm good with it.
Well, I
That's why
think,
he's asking.
yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's something he wants to do.
Yep.
So, yeah, we certainly ought to be working with him on it. That's, whether a reclassification takes place or not, I think as a future discussion, but for right now, I appreciate what you're doing and offering, and I don't think the town should walk away from that. We should help as much as we can. Anybody else? Anybody feel differently? Okay, thank you, Chris.
That's all I have.
Well, it's about time.
Sorry.
Mr. Feds, people speaking.
No, it's,
Taking forever.
well, we're not doing too bad for one meeting a month. I mean, when you get right down to it. So future agenda items, set the fiscal year tax rate. I have under any other business to set the date for that. 1879 Schoolhouse Rules and Regulations, that's coming off of the details of Martin Memorial Hall. Policy conduct of meetings and hearings, that's a review of those, correct, Brandon?
Yes.
ARPA allocations, and that would, that would, let me see, that would bring down the what discussion was it? On ARPA funds, the generator,
Yes.
the generator discussion for ARPA.
Transfer station.
Waiving the purchasing policy. We're gonna do that under other business, so, okay. Yep, transfer. What else you got, Brendan?
We got a third reading of the,
Yep,
yep.
third reading. Anything else?
Don't have much.
So appointments, anything else under future agenda from anybody? Okay, appointments, budget committee, we have 3 vacancies and we have 3 names. Brian Payson, Chris Charest, and Gary Graham. I believe those are the only appointments for tonight. Do I hear a motion to appoint Brian Payson, Chris Charest, and Gary Graham to the budget committee?
I'll make a motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. It's unanimous. Approve the warrant. Do I hear a motion to approve the warrants? Yes, motion to approve the warrants,
Oh,
please.
can I ask a question? Why is there 2 on here when we had 1 that I came in and signed for?
So we're still putting even though it's, the first one's approved, I thought we had discussed also putting it in the packet.
So I have to read that one as well?
No.
Oh, okay, so I just go to the second one?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the warrant as soon as I get to it.
Which date?
I'll tell you as soon as I get to it.
Okay. 43 of 81, I think, is where they start.
What page did you say?
43 of 81.
No, I'm looking at the warrant meeting for June 24th.
Okay, so you're.
It's on page 63 of 81.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. General,
63.
you there?
Yep.
General fund payroll, $18,953.01. Operating expenses, $18,092.82. Highway fund payroll, $9,263.08. Operating expenses, $11,828.12. Solid waste management fund payroll, $2,227.73. Operating expenses, $867.13. I don't know what that 15,000 is. I guess that's a little baffling. Library, payroll, $2,393.01. ARPA funds, $2,500. Grand totals, Payroll, $32,836.83. Operating expenses, $33,288.07.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second on the motion. Any discussion on the warrants?
I got a question on what that AP is under solid waste management for $15,561.73, but it doesn't appear in the bottom.
It doesn't add up into the bottom?
Well, it doesn't add up into that total of that line item.
It doesn't add up.
Oh,
So I think, that was the 624, I'm sorry. I'm not completely sure what that is. And it's not added up in the total. I think it's an error.
I think AP might have been your Elva projection, because when you called me, you didn't have a invoice yet, and you were questioning me about it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so it just, don't include that 15,000. And I'll talk to patients about it in the morning to see. why
Well, it wasn't
that's there.
included in that total on that line item,
I
so.
think you
It's
said
not
you were-
included in the grand total either.
Okay,
okay.
This is our second warrant. Let's go to the patient and I'll discuss it with her tomorrow.
okay.
Okay. So the AP number for now is just it's off the table.
Yeah.
It's not even included.
Yeah,
in the
I-
total.
motion right now.
Yeah,
Yep, okay.
and it's
Just want
not
to make
included
sure.
in the grand total.
Yep, I'm good with that. Just wanted to make sure. Any further discussion on the warrants? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. It's unanimous. Any other business? Waive the purchasing policy? Do you want to do that tonight or not?
What does the board think?
The excavator.
Yeah, I know,
This is on this is for the work, yes, for the highway, for,
For the hydraulically connected.
I've
Yes,
been
for the-
grappling with this for a couple of years, and I understand where Ray's coming from, and I understand that it's grant money, but I do also know that it's $36,000. And it is tough, because if we don't go out to bid, and we give it to any person, it's just gonna look
That's what I'm worried about.
like other people were given opportunity.
The full 36 doesn't go to the vendor, just a portion for the excavation. A lot of it's stone and culvert.
I think,
How's the vendor decision made?
I have people that I contact that I've worked with, we've worked with as a town for several years and in the past, that's where that rate sheet should come up in the future. So we have it sent out, and we have rates come in, and it's open to everybody to bid on it, not bid on it, but send in their rates for their machine. And then you can call them if you need them.
So are you saying we don't have time to get bids?
I think my recommendation is to get 3 quotes for hourly rates, at a minimum.
Yep.
At least 3 quotes from 3 separate vendors, and then that,
for the hourly rates.
yeah, advertise an RFQ and go in that direction.
That worked well.
Okay.
Okay.
30-day.
No, it'll be, we can do 15 with RFQs.
Good.
It's faster.
That seems like a better solution to me. That way it's public, people can
Yeah.
And if
make
you
sure
are-
they can throw their name in the
If the board is
timeline.
interested, can just somehow get a policy in the future so we can send out an annual rate request, or an RFQ annually?
We definitely need purchasing policy revisions, and this is a case where we're hiring somebody. This is the one odd case that we've had trouble with for.
Is it a
4
service?
years.
Yes.
Is it not? And, you know, what?
And I agree with Nate as well, that this is important, and you, and if Dave was here, he would be singing the same song.
Yeah.
I know he would. So, I think that's a good idea to get the, at least 3 quotes on hourly rate. Do an RFQ. And then
Well, I think
we'll bring it
that's
back.
a good solution. I think, at
Okay.
least to my worry about making sure everybody has a chance to
Yeah.
put their name in and
Set the date for the meeting for the tax rate. 7/8 through 7/11, somewhere in that area, you said?
Yeah, that's up to you guys. My schedule is completely available that week, so any night works for me.
7/8, let me see, 7/8 would actually be the second, so the 8th would be a planning commission meeting. No, that would be our meeting, second, well, it wouldn't be ours, we went to the 2nd and 4th, right?
Yeah, and that is the second Monday. We could limit the agenda to the tax
But
rate.
do we have a meeting on the 8th?
No, it's once a month,
Correct.
so,
So the 8th is open.
yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure before I commit myself to that night.
I'm out of town that day.
Okay. 9th, 10th,
I-
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
I believe I don't get back till the 13th.
Oh, so you're going that whole
I'm
whole
out that
week?
week.
Okay.
That doesn't
Um,
mean I can't, especially with the fancy technology like that I hear about. I couldn't,
Well, last year, we had to come back and do a redo, and I did it on the phone.
I think we all did it on the phone last year.
We
No,
did.
I think there were a couple of us here.
Oh, were there?
Yeah,
Okay.
because there has to be at least
Yeah.
one person in the
Yeah, I
room.
think.
So, and that was one of the things I wanted to bring up is, the later we wait, if we can wait later, the better. Because you have information still coming in from the state that we'll jump on the gun and pick a number, and then 2 weeks or 3 days later,
3 days
we learn
later.
something new, and we gotta redo it.
right, with the yields conversation that's going on right now.
Yeah, so,
Why don't we just not schedule the meeting yet?
okay,
And then I'll email the board
Yeah.
as I collect information.
perfect, that takes
Time
care,
after the 13th.
Okay.
and that takes care of any other business? Do I, whoop,
Motion to
oh,
adjourn.
whoop, hold on.
Sorry. And I have like 2 minutes for any other
Yeah,
business?
yes, go. 2 minutes, set the timer.
So FEMA update, we are working on the Ascutney Basin Bridge. The replacement should be done by early August. That's going along quite nicely. The design has been done and completed for the riprap on the Upper Falls Covered Bridge. That should be going out to bid soon. Brandon and I need to sit down and go over it and talk to Todd. He's on vacation this week, so he won't be back until next week. The one issue we have that you need to be aware of that we're going to have to figure out is Little Ascutney Road Bridge. We have undercut washout underneath the bridge that we claimed for the July 10th storms that happened during the storm. So the abutment and the wing wall are going to be fixed with the FEMA contention. You all right,
You okay?
Olivia?
Olivia, you
You good?
okay?
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Didn't look so hot there for a second. I was just worried about you. Anyway, they did a complete survey of the site, and we knew the wing wall was listing on the upstream side on the west. Didn't know the severity of it. When the surveyor got done, it's very precarious. It's actually going to be in the way of doing the repair for the undercut of the abutment. So the best solution is to fix the wing wall at the same time as we're doing the work in the river. We have the same permit and the same access and everything all set up. That's gonna be on us. It's gonna be between $80,000 and $100,000 to repair the wing wall, replace the wing wall. The second option is possibly tear the wing wall out and replace it with riprap. That comes with challenges. The possibility is that it's gonna be a soft spot, and the river, the way it comes in straight to that and hits it hard, it could cut right around the backside of that bridge and go right into the Young's property in the future with a big storm. So the engineer and I have come up with the best possible solution is, as we do the FEMA work, also include a bid to replace that wing wall, because it has to be removed or taken care of to do the work for FEMA, but it's not included in FEMA. It's not caused by the damage, it's an old wing wall that's failing. It needs to be addressed. It's going to be a hefty repair as far as money-wise, so it's just something to keep on the radar. If not, the cheap way out, which is probably not the best way out, is to tear it out and put riprap in its place for now. And hopefully it lasts until, it can last all the storms for 10 or 15 years until the bridge needs to be replaced completely.
You know how I always say things I shouldn't say?
Yes, sir.
I'm really good at that. Where's the guy that stole the excavator for to break into the store? If we could just get him to steal an excavator and straighten that brook out right there, it'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah. So anyways, I can give you a full report at the next meeting if you want to put it on the agenda, and I can get Todd here to explain it further with all the prints. It's pretty severe. It's pretty precarious. It's leaning 6 inches out on the top.
Yeah.
And the underside is maybe some concrete, but mostly rocks that just kind of sitting on. Just for a heads up.
Okay. Okay, Cal, go.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Rita seconded.